Did y'all really think I was going to let my boy Peter Gabriel put out 2 new songs and have me not talk about it, have me not make a video about it? Yeah, you were wrong. You were dead wrong. I was just waiting to let the materials marinate in my brain before I decided to make a video about said songs. Now, not only is Peter Gabriel putting out new songs, he's also launching a U.S. tour. He's also putting out a new album. So in the world of Peter Gabriel fans, this is a great time to be alive. And, you know, unlike if you're a Smashing Pumpkins fan and they're announcing a new album, you're like, oh, man, this is going to be a rough one. Peter Gabriel takes his damn time with his stuff. That's why the last time we ever got anything from Pete was a little over 20 years ago with the album Up. And I was in like 8th grade when I bought that album. And as growing up as a fan of Peter's early albums, such as Melt and Security, those are kind of fan unofficial titles, but whatever. When I listened to Up, I felt like it was a slower, more tired Peter Gabriel. But then it grew on me, and I will say his last album was very depressing. It had a lot of very depressing moments, but it was also a very beautiful album with songs like Signal to Noise on there. So anyway, his new album is going to be called I.O. And if you know anything about how Pete likes naming his albums, he just loves sticking with the 2-letter thing. If you look at his past work, Us, Up, and now I.O. So clever use of sticking to your whole like 2-letter album cover thing. I.O. of course means input, output. I believe this is a concept album after hearing the song Panopticom. God, that's kind of harder to say than I thought. The lyrics on that song, and that's one of the new ones that he's released. The lyrics are very, what exactly is he talking about? They're kind of veiled and kind of futurism in there, if you will. But we'll get to that. And so now let's talk about this tour that he's got going on in North America, I should say, because it's not just U.S. He is not touching the South with a 10-foot pole, and that is really a bummer, because I remember the last time he was touring in the U.S., I believe it was when he was on tour with Sting, and they were doing their co-headlining thing, and the closest he got then was Washington, D.C., which... still a long ass drive from Jacksonville, Florida. I'm never going to fly somewhere to see a concert. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to do that. So it was pretty much out of reach, even in Washington, D.C. But now, if we look at it, these are the places that he's going. I'm going to skip Canada because I don't live in Canada. But in the U.S., he's going to Boston, Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, Vancouver, Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and possibly Washington, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Columbus, Cleveland, Detroit, Milwaukee, St. Paul, Denver, Austin, Dallas, and Houston. So yes, he is tickling Texas's balls, but that's it. He is not crossing the Mason-Dixon line, I believe. So that sucks. That really sucks that he's not coming anywhere near the South, and I get it. That's probably not a market that he does well in. There isn't enough sophistication down here, unfortunately, that would enjoy Peter Gabriel on the level that he needs to be enjoyed. So I'm sure that was the reason. I'm sure it's nothing personal against Southerners. I think there's just no market down here for Pete's music, except for Josh, me. So anyway, let's talk about these songs. Now, before I get into these songs, I do have to mention a weird thing that Pete did. You like how I'm calling him Pete, like we've been best friends for like 30... Yeah, me and Pete, we know each other. I'm sorry, I refer to him as Mr. Gabriel. He always does weird shtick. There's always a gimmick with whatever he does. He never just kind of like is direct with something. He's always got to have like, but what if we did this? Or, what if we did that? Or whatever. And then these songs are no different, and how he decided to release them was unique, I guess, in the sense that there is a bright mix, a bright side mix, and there is a dark side mix. Now, apparently, he's got these two world-renowned engineers, and they both got a crack at mixing the songs. And depending on, I guess, the moon or whatever, and in Pete's intention, there I go calling him Pete again, whatever. He'll either release the dark side mix or the bright side mix first, depending on kind of like what he wants you to hear first. Now, we'll get to the nuances of the various mixes, but that to me is just a really silly idea. Unless the mixes were like markedly different from one another, which they're not. I mean, we're talking about a mix here. We're not talking about adding new instruments. We're not talking about like a different version or anything like that. It's like I play a song on a guitar, and then one guy turns the bass down and turns the treble up, and the other guy turns the treble down and turns the bass up. They're two technically different mixes, but it's the same instrumentation. So it was a weird idea, but whatever. The songs are still there, so that's all we can really hope for. So the first song that came out, I want to say like a month or so ago, Panopticom, which I'm sure is a word that Pete made up that's going to fit into his concept or whatever. The song very much has like an Up vibe to it. Like it totally could have lived on the album Up, but it's like way less depressing than the songs on Up, which is a good thing. Because aside from Growing Up, every other song on that album was just a bummer. And this song's not depressing, but the verses are very dark. The instrumentation is great. It's got a lot. It's hitting a lot of the dark, more ominous notes that I like in music, and what I've liked about Pete's old work as well. Thank Family and the Fishing Net. But then the chorus just kind of comes in with this nice, like, acoustic, sparse, Panopticom. Just, and then the chorus kind of kicks in proper with the bass and the drums and all that, and it's like, it's got a pretty grooving song. It's like, all right, now we're going. We're off to the races. And let me just say, Peter Gabriel's voice sounds fucking great. Like, it has not aged at all. Well, I mean, it has aged from his Genesis days, but, man, essentially from, like, So till now, so like what, 40 years almost, his album that he did in like 1985 or 86, his voice has pretty much sounded the same. And Phil Collins, buddy, take notes. Your former bandmate here, he knows how to take care of his fucking voice, unlike you, sir. Can't blame Phil too bad. It could have been some other factor that I'm not aware of that made his voice turn to shit. But Pete, man, he still sounds really great. By the way, that reminds me, he did a feature on the Arcade Fire song, Unconditional Race and Religion, whatever. It was off their newest album, We. And he did guest vocals, and it totally makes sense that Arcade Fire would want to feature Peter Gabriel on the records, because their stuff is very experimental and dark and very much off the beaten track of like what's popular. And that's why Arcade Fire is one of my favorite bands as well, who I barely talk about them, but when he featured on that song like last year or so, I was like, damn, his voice sounds fucking great. And these songs are no different, dude. He's just kept up with it. His voice still sounds great. Panopticom is a great song. It's got that great intro with the vibey acoustic guitar with the synth, and Pete's kind of legendary voice kind of just moaning in the background. Moaning is the best way I know how to describe that. So now that was the bright side mix that came out first. Now let's talk about the dark side mix. Now, my biggest thing with these mixes is like there's not that big of a difference. So I don't quite understand what facilitated the need for these two separate mixes, but whatever. So the dark side mix to me just sounds more low end, especially on the kick. The song sounds just maybe a bit heavier, maybe some distortion on the guitar in the chorus instead of more of a cleaner sound. But again, there's really not enough of a difference to call it like a new, or I should say, yes, this is a new mix, but it's not different enough to like really warrant being released. And that's my confusion on both of these songs, is that it's so similar that like, why did we need to hear that? Unless he got into some like legal trouble with the engineers where like he was secretly having a second engineer do the mixes as well, and the first one found out about the second one, and he's like, hey man, we had a contract, I'm gonna sue you if you don't put out my mix. And Pete's like, all right guys, I'll tell you what, I'll put out both your mixes and make up some bullshit story about why it's necessary that I do so. And apparently somebody is shooting off like a Civil War era fucking cannon ball shooter thing outside of my house right now. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can. It's annoying. The next single that we get to that was released more recently is The Court. But on this one, the Dark Side remix, or mix, I should say, that was what was meant to be heard first. This song intros with Pete's voice doing these very staccato melodies, which are cool, you know, when he does stuff like that. And then the chorus kicks in. I gotta say, man, for being an older guy as Pete is, he sure knows how to write a modern-sounding chorus. Because this chorus sounds like something that I could almost potentially hear on the radio. He's I know with the integrity that he has, he doesn't have outside writers helping him. And for someone that claims that he's just out of touch with everything mainstream and pop culture these days, his writing doesn't sound like it. It sure as hell doesn't sound like it. When I put on Panopticom at one of my karaoke gigs, I was talking to some old timers who really liked that kind of music and like indie music and all that. And I'm like, dude, I was like, this is Peter Gabriel's new music. It doesn't sound like an old Peter Gabriel song. It sounds like they thought it was just some new song or whatever. So good on him, you know, good on him, because let me tell you, like Phil Collins, his solo stuff started sounding real like corny. Definitely by the time he released his Dance Into the Light album and then Testify, like those things, they just start. It's like he really did peak in the 80s with like that 80s sound with that the everything being synthed up and the fake drum machines and all that kind of stuff. Like Phil Collins knew how to write for that kind of stuff. When the 90s and beyond happened, he didn't know how to write those songs anymore. He's like, I can't, you know, guitars, distortion, like I don't do that. I've only done that on like Easy Lover. So yeah, anyway, got off a little off track there. There's an interesting change up in the middle of The Court, in the middle of the song that I wasn't expecting, which anything that I'm not expecting, I always love in music. Because 9 times out of 10, I expect every single thing that the artist is about to do, and that's why I hate pop music. I shouldn't say hate, but highly dislike. So there you go on that one. I will say on the Dark Side mix, the outro got a bit boring, got a little bit like muddy as far as being able to hear what was going on, and I was like, all right, you know, I'm getting kind of over it. Because Peter Gabriel doesn't ever really write a short song, so these songs both clock in at around, I want to say, like 5 or 6 minutes. But then, surprisingly, on the Bright Side mix, which came out after the Dark Side, because you'd think the Bright Side would come first, I like how they mixed it better. It's clearer and it's more audible, and therefore I enjoyed it more. And the only other difference I could tell on the Bright Side mix was they added like some slapback delay on Peter's vocals, but that's literally it. I really am befuddled as to the reason for him releasing a Dark Side and a Bright Side when they sound so similar. But yeah, very happy about this. Very excited to hear the rest of this album, and I think he's just dripping the singles out one by one. Smart move, Pete. Whoever you got in your camp that's telling you to do that, good idea. Instead of just dropping, say, like 3 albums in like 6 months, Smashing Pumpkins, and not giving people any chance to like digest each single song, because that's kind of how you have to do it in the streaming era. If you just drop a whole lot of material at once, a lot of shit's going to get ignored. And since he's dropping songs one at a time, that means he's writing more kind of single-oriented songs, which is never a bad thing when Peter Gabriel does it, because if he's writing a pop song, it's going to be different and it's going to be good. Because there's not a whole lot of Peter Gabriel songs that I do not like. I'm going to tattoo that guy one of these days. But yeah, I think that is all I have to say about his new music that's coming out. Very excited to hear the rest of it. Isn't it weird that you're getting like a positive video from me? And I'm not like shitting on anything. Well, I did kind of shit on Phil Collins, but we all know what's going on with him these days if you've watched this channel. But anyway, I think that's it for this video. If you liked it, make sure you subscribe and comment. If you like Peter Gabriel, definitely want to hear from you. And go check out the songs. Give them a listen. You'll probably like at least one of them. I don't know. Till next time, have a good rest of your night. And bye.